Hi everyone, welcome back to A Modern Midwest Homestead. Today we're going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to show you one of our favorite family recipes. Homesteading really revolves around food. We grow it, we preserve it, and naturally we eat it. So I really want to try to incorporate some more of our family recipes in my videos this year. Of course, we raise sheep both as show lambs, market lambs, and of course we now have dairy sheep as well. So it's just natural that we love to eat lamb. I would say that I probably like it the most out of everyone in our family. Once I learned how much I liked it, it just made sense to find some good recipes and really learn how to make it so that our family would enjoy it also. Today I'm going to show you how to make homemade gyros. Now I'm going to warn you, these are not authentic gyros. This is the way that I have learned to make them that our family enjoys, and that is a simple way to have a good meal at home. When I make gyros, I always start with ground lamb, and I always take it out of the refrigerator and let it sit while I'm getting everything else ready so that it can warm up a little bit. It just makes it so much easier to work with. So I'm just going to transfer this to my mixing bowl. Then I'm going to take a serving spoon and just kind of break up the meat a little bit. I'm not really mixing it yet. I'm just chopping it up a little bit so that when I put my seasoning over it, it'll combine more easily. Okay. There we go. Now for my seasoning mix, I use a very basic seasoning mix. I tried to incorporate some Greek flavors into my seasoning. So I've got garlic powder, onion powder, dried oregano, ground coriander, kosher salt, and black pepper. I use a certain proportion of seasoning per pound of meat. So for oregano, I use 1 teaspoon per pound of meat. Today I'm using 2 pounds of lamb, so I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of oregano. I use a half teaspoon of garlic per pound, so today I'm using a full teaspoon. And the same of onion powder. I do a half teaspoon per pound of meat, so today I'm using a full teaspoon. Then I use a 1/4 teaspoon of ground coriander per pound. So today I'm using a half teaspoon. And then I'm going to use a teaspoon of salt per pound. So today that is 2 teaspoons. And I do use kosher salt. So depending on the type of salt you're using, it's going to change how salty the recipe actually is. And then fresh cracked pepper, I try to shoot for about 1/4 teaspoon per pound, but of course just do it to your taste. And since I crack it fresh, I don't actually measure, I just kind of eyeball. Okay, and then I'm just gonna mix it together a bit here, get it all combined. If you combine all of your spices first, before you put it on your meat, I find that you can get it to mix up and combine a lot more easily. Okay, so there's our seasoning, and I'm just gonna take, and I just sprinkle it all over. And again, I find by having it pre-mixed and then sprinkling it all over the surface, it gets combined with the meat a lot more thoroughly, and it's easier to get it mixed together. Then I use my hands and I just start mixing it as well as I can. You really want this to be thoroughly mixed to make sure that the spices are all throughout it, but you also want this you want the meat to really stick together, because basically we're making like a Greek seasoned meatloaf here. Now you might have thought maybe that was a lot of seasoning, but you have to remember you're not going to be eating this meat plain, although we do. you're not intending to eat it by itself. You're going to have other toppings and bread with it. So you really want to be generous with your seasoning, and lamb can handle it. Now, authentic or traditional gyros are made by layering seasoned meat onto a rotisserie, and they just layer the meat on there, and then it kind of slow roasts. And then once it's cooked, they shave it off the side to get these thin strips that they put on the sandwiches. And this is not authentic, but what I'm trying to do here is kind of duplicate that same thin strips of seasoned meat that we're going to put on our gyros. I've got our meat really well combined. You can see it's kind of sticky, it's holding together really well, and I've got my seasonings all combined, so that looks good to me. So now that I have my meat seasoned and everything combined really well, I'm going to grab my pans. When I cook these, I just use a bread loaf pan, but I use 2 of them, and I'll show you why here in just a second. So I take the meat and just press it into a log into the bottom of the pan. And then I use my fingers to press it down as flat and as tight as I can get it. I line the second pan with foil on the outside so that it doesn't get so greasy whenever I do this. But I take the second pan and put it straight on top of the meat and press it down. Now to this, you could add some water to make it heavier. If you don't have 2 pans, you could get a brick and wrap it this something just to give it enough weight to keep that meat pressed down where it's not gonna draw up and get really fat as it cooks. I have the oven preheated to 375 degrees, and it's probably gonna take around 45 minutes. So we'll check the internal temperature at 45 minutes and see how close we're getting. Now, ideally, you're gonna want to have your meat cooked ahead of time. Even the day before would be fine, because once it's finished cooking, you're gonna wanna take it out and let it cool completely before you move on to the next step. You could go ahead and slice it straight out of the pan, but it's gonna be a lot more crumbly and it's gonna be harder to slice. So I try to always let it cool completely before I go on to the next step. I'm going to go ahead and show you the toppings that we like to have on our gyros while we wait. To be more authentic or traditional, I would say that red onion would probably be the best choice, but what I have is yellow onion, so just use whatever you have. Okay. I like to dice it fairly small. For us, a little onion seems to go a long way. Something that I really like to put on my gyros is kalamata olives. I know not everybody cares for them, and they can be very strong. So what I like to do is just chop them up a little bit so I'm not getting quite as big of a piece of olive. Tzatziki sauce is the traditional sauce that you would put on your gyros, and it's a yogurt sauce made with dill and cucumbers and lemon. But I find that I don't always have all of those ingredients on hand, and it also takes more time to prepare. So I do a terrible shortcut, and I either use plain Greek yogurt, or a lot of times I use sour cream because that's what I already have. But then I do like to go ahead and dice up cucumber to go on it, so that I have that cucumber flavor and freshness to go with it. So if you really wanted to try to be more authentic, you could make up a delicious tzatziki sauce to go with it. but today I'm just going to shortcut it. Okay. I like to have it diced, not super small, but just manageable pieces so that it's easier to eat. I'm definitely ready to have some fresh cucumbers from the garden. And if tomatoes were in season right now, I would absolutely be slicing up a fresh tomato to put on this. But it is not tomato season where we live, and I rarely ever buy tomatoes from the store unless it's cherry tomatoes. They're just not good. But sliced tomatoes would be a very traditional topping to put on your gyros. The last topping that we put on our gyros, and this is the most important one, is feta cheese. Feta is probably our most favorite cheese that we eat. We eat it on a lot of different things. We eat with the kalamata olives, the onion, and that seasoned meat. It just tastes so good together, and we always make sure that we have plenty. Now what I'm gonna do is just crumble this up with my hands. You could use a knife to cut it in little pieces, but feta is a very crumbly cheese, so it's easy to just crumble it up. Now, you want to make sure that you're buying good feta cheese and don't be shy with it. I'm gonna crumble this whole block. I know it's not gonna be enough. Okay, I'm just gonna clean up for a minute and then I will be back whenever we're ready to move on. It's been 45 minutes, so I'm ready to take the meat out of the oven and check the temperature to see if it's ready. You want to be very careful when you take this out because there's going to be a lot of fat and liquid all around the meat, so just be very careful when you're moving it. Okay. I'll just stick my thermometer right in the center of the meat and see what the temperature is. We want it to be at least 165. Oh yeah, this is definitely done. It's going much higher than 165. So it's ready. I'm going to take a meat fork and very carefully lift it out and let the extra liquid drain off of it and put it on the plate. And I will just leave it on this plate for a few minutes to cool. And then I will put it in the refrigerator to cool completely. Now I've got my gyro meat cooked and completely cooled. So what I'm going to do is transfer it to the cutting board. And I'm going to try to slice it as thinly as I can. So then I'm just gonna take the meat that I sliced, and normally I would slice all of it at once, but I'm just gonna take the part that I've sliced to show you how I do the rest of it. Now, before you start heating your gyro meat up in the skillet, you wanna make sure and have everything ready. So we use pita bread. We've used a lot of different things. You can use pita bread or a flatbread. We've made homemade tortillas before and used those. You just want something that's a little thicker and kind of chewy to really get a good gyro. So you can use anything like that you want, or you can completely skip the bread and just make like a Greek bowl with all of the toppings and meat in a bowl together. So we've got our pita bread warm and ready. I've got all of my toppings out here. And then behind me, I've got my skillet heated up so that I want everything ready before I start reheating the meat. Once it's hot, this will go very quickly. So then I just lay it in the pan, let it get nice and hot on each side. It's starting to sizzle a little, and you can see the fat is starting to kind of melt in the pan. I normally don't add any oil or butter or anything like that. You could do a little bit of olive oil or butter if you wanted, but I think the meat has plenty of fat in it and doesn't need any extra. Then once it's ready, I just put it back on the plate, and I'll take it back over and show you how we put these together. Okay, so I always start with my pita, and then this would be where you would use your sauce. We usually just use sour cream or Greek yogurt. I just put plenty of sour cream on. Then I put a generous amount of meat on top. Put a little more sour cream so that the toppings stick. And then you just add whatever you like on top of it. You can do the cucumbers. Some olives. I put everything just kind of right down the middle because I'm gonna fold it up kind of like a taco. And put some onion. And then of course our feta cheese. And doesn't that just look delicious? It's very good, and it's no secret why this is one of our favorite meals. A really fun way that I like to make this for the kids is to make what I call Greek nachos. And then I would take my pita bread and cut it into triangles. And you could just warm it up, or you could toast it and make pita chips. And then just put all of your toppings on top of those pita chips. If you were planning on doing that, you could just cook the meat in the skillet instead of making a meatloaf. You could just brown the meat and the seasonings in a skillet, and it would be a lot easier to top the nachos with the meat like that. Or you can just cut this kind of meat up or crumble it up and put it on your nachos. We love doing that. And Dwayne really loves gyro omelets. Then what you would do is take your leftover meat and slice it thin or cut it into chunks. And then you would just put the gyro meat, the feta cheese in the omelet, and then you could top it with your tzatziki sauce or your Greek yogurt or sour cream, and it just makes a really delicious omelet also. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with this gyro meat to change it up a little bit and make it to suit your family also. I really hope you enjoy this recipe for our version of gyros, and I would love to hear what you think of it. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.